Hey guys, I'm Margot White, and I'm going to be talking to you today about how to write a song as an indie artist. Today I'm going to be talking about just what it means to get started on sitting down and deciding how you want to write a song, because it's always going to be different no matter what sort of formula works for you one day. I really think that if it's organic and if you're really feeling what you're doing, it's not meant to look the same every single time. But that being said, there are definitely tools to kind of get the ball rolling for where you want to go, setting kind of just an idea in mind. And the best thing of all, I think, is when I think a lot of people are probably the most familiar with this sort of idea about songwriting, is that it just comes from a place of inspiration. I'm sure everyone has kind of like a favorite story about their favorite musician who woke up at like 4 in the morning and had a melody in their head. And yeah, that does happen a lot, especially if you're writing music all the time. So yeah, I was just gonna start with kind of the books that have really helped me and that I find I refer to on a really regular basis. So probably the first book that I would recommend would be Songwriters on Songwriting by Paul Zollo. That was recommended to me a lot before I actually got the book, and I received it as a gift for Christmas. And once I got it, I haven't looked back. It's kind of one of those things that I always find something new and interesting and inspiring. So I just keep it really handy on the bookshelf. And if you're in the studio and you kind of are stuck on an idea, or you just don't really like feel that inspired that day, then it's kind of a cool one to have around, because it's just interviews with really established songwriters. A lot of people whom you might not have heard their name before, but they have written some amazing hits, and once you hear what songs they've written, it's kind of like, oh my god, how do I not know about them? But there's also some like more well-known ones, like I feel like Carole King is in it. I'm gonna blank now that I'm trying to think about it, but like Jimmy Webb, and kind of just like some hard hitters from like the 50s, the 60s. It covers different decades, different genres, and it's just kind of meant to present you with this very comprehensive look at what goes on inside the brain of a songwriter, and kind of how they've developed and what influenced them from the very beginning. And yeah, it's about this big, and it's just great. So yeah, the next on the list would be Songwriting, a complete guide to the craft. And that is by, I think the latest edition is by Steven Citrone. That one is just amazing because it's a lot more technical. It's a lot more just in terms of speaking to the form of a ballad or a traditional 4/4 pop song, kind of like what tempo it's usually in, what chord progressions you might see a lot, examples of songs. And I really like this one because it leans again on way older influences, like stuff from the 30s, jazz standards, things that have influenced our popular music now, but just maybe not in such a clear way, and kind of just gives you an awareness of what the foundation of all of our popular music today, what it came from. Not even just popular music, but like indie music and jazz and blues and R&B and soul. Like it all came from really interesting roots, kind of the music that was going on in America that happened from the blues in the South, and then that kind of worked its way up throughout America and in Europe as well, and how blues and jazz have kind of woven together, which is another topic in itself, and an amazing one, which I totally recommend anyone to go and research in as much depth as possible, because it really speaks to so much more than music, but just definitely music in terms of how people have coped and just developed and healed in ways with certain song forms, which is why I think it's super important for us to be aware of that when we are sitting down to write a song. So I would say the next on the list, and by no means is this list kind of like the only things that I go to. I feel like I kind of go in phases, and it just depends on what speaks to me in the moment. So I would say just kind of this summer, these are the main ones. Although I would say these have kind of been sticking with me for over a year now, so I don't see myself going away from them anytime soon. The next one would be Electric Eden. It's all about the history of music in the United Kingdom, going way back to like 300 years ago, how that influenced classical composers about 200 years ago, and then how that movement ended up influencing kind of the British folk rock scene in the 60s. So you kind of have these little perspectives on Donovan and Vashti Bunyan and a lot of people who have influenced kind of like the freak folk scene and just so much indie music today. Again, that I don't know, it's hard to be aware of everything that's influencing us, but I just think it's so interesting to kind of pick apart and go down these little rabbit holes of what, when you hear a certain melody and you're like, whoa, that was totally picked up from like this sonata piece or something that you wouldn't immediately make that connection, but once you do, it feels like quite magic and special. It's very cool. It's like it covers like Mark Bolan as well, and a little bit of David Bowie, because they were in England and influenced by that sort of stuff too. A lot of pagan influences, a lot of very mystical and Celtic stuff, so that's just super cool. I would say the last one I'm going to mention is How to Write a Song by Jeff Tweedy. Where to start with this one? I'm not always a huge fan of kind of how-to situations with music, because I didn't start with music that way. I started in music by just hearing a song and kind of having my own internal conversation with it, in terms of like it almost kind of feels like sometimes a song's asking a question to you, and it's asking you to look for the answer within yourself. And a lot of songwriting, I think, and the tradition of songwriting is kind of about expressing that conversation and expressing what you have found within yourself through that process. Because I think, we have all the answers we need within ourselves in terms of going through more challenging times, or just kind of finding what lights us up in life. I guess like regarding this book, I wouldn't have gone to it, but again, this was a gift as well. So, and I'm a big fan of Jeff Tweedy's work too, so it kind of was a no-brainer. But then once I got into it, I was really amazed by how clearly he lays out his philosophy on songwriting, and also just amazing little exercises that are so much fun to do in terms of words and expanding the mind, and how you look at a song. Has a lot to do with discipline, which is great as a songwriter. You really need that. You really need to be able to just sit down every day and write music. And a lot of people say, it's hard work, and it does pay off, and it does, but at the same time, I think if you love music and you love what you're doing, it does not feel like work. It's kind of one of those things where I feel lucky that I get to wake up every day and do this. So but this book, I think, it gives you sort of a structure of where to focus that passion, where to focus that energy. When you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I don't even know where to start, just kind of, if you flip through this book, it gives you places to start that are super concrete and definable for yourself. So, and you can just take it at your own pace. So that's cool. That's kind of just everything in terms of influences and getting your head in the right space when it comes to sitting down to write a song, whether it's for yourself as an indie artist or someone else. Like, say, I just took the Ryan Tedder songwriter course. It's just kind of like an online thing that you can do through Monthly, I think. And I thought that was pretty cool because it had some tips on like when you go to a session and you're scheduled to show up at 2 p.m. and you get there and you're in a room with like a producer, maybe someone on keys, maybe a songwriter or multiple songwriters. And usually I feel like these sessions, they kind of have an organic flow and everyone knows what they're there for, especially if you have a brief to write to or something like that. And for those of you who don't know, a brief is like when you are working with an artist and they send over literally what type of song they're looking for. It will usually have some sort of reference, like an artist reference. I guess working more in pop, if it's someone who's like, oh, I want like a Dua Lipa, Don't Start Now, kind of like tempo and mood, then you're usually going to put that song on and kind of vibe to it and see what comes. And I know some people work differently in this case too, because some people don't like to hear the song at all. Like if they already know it and they're familiar with what the lyrics are about and stuff, then they don't want to be influenced too much by it, which I totally get. And I'll kind of I'll go with that too sometimes, because yeah, it's annoying when you've written something and you're like, oh, it just sounds exactly like this reference. Like you don't want to be releasing something that's exactly the same, even if the artist does want it to sound similar and kind of be in that general direction. So yeah, references are good, but in terms of just going in and sitting down and writing a song, I think what I want to do today is focus on what it looks like when maybe you're by yourself and you literally don't know where to start. And I am going to include kind of what this looks like more for people who have DAWs and who are a little bit familiar with either working with Ableton or Pro Tools or Logic, just in terms of being able to sit down with a mic. And usually it's a guitar for me, sometimes it's a keyboard. I do love working with pianos. I travel a lot for my work, so I don't always have a chance to work on a piano, unfortunately, but that when I'm at home, that's definitely kind of my favorite thing to do, is just wake up and like warm up a little bit on the piano, on the guitar, warm up my vocals, and kind of go through like any voice memos that I've had in the night, which is a lot of times when that stuff comes through, and just sitting down and getting a basic framework. And what that usually looks like is I'm gonna start with if you have a melody first. So say you just have a melody come into your head and you're like, cool, like what do I do with this? Usually I will transcribe it to my guitar or piano. I'll see what key it's in and I'll kind of memorize what most of our popular melodies, they're usually like 3 notes, 5 max. Like 5 feels crazy. If it's like a melodic motif, it's usually like, I feel like a lot of people are aware that Taylor Swift songs, they will sit on 1 note just consistently, which like sounds crazy, but it also works really well in terms of popular music. Like jazz, no, that doesn't really, I mean it does sometimes, but it's not as common. And in other song genre or music genres, like it gets a lot more complex, but that's kind of the beauty of popular music, and also as a result indie music, because in my opinion indie music is quite similar to pop music. It's meant for like staying on top of modern trends, especially in terms of production, and it's meant to kind of just get people in an easily accessible mood. Like I feel like pop a lot of times is either, I don't want to overgeneralize, but it is very much, there's some consistent themes, whether it's love, feeling upbeat, or feeling really, really sad, like you've just gotten over a breakup or something and you're like super angry, or just really, really depressed and you just want to kind of be able to like sing along to something. But indie music, I feel like gets a little bit more varied. It can get a little bit more experimental, a little bit more weird, which is cool and why I like it personally. And you can just kind of bring in whatever influences you want. But in terms of, I'm kind of just like gonna go back and forth between using pop and indie a little bit interchangeably in this video, because I think these tools can be applied to both types of genres. So yeah, starting with a melody, kind of sing it, get get it down, like whether it's on paper, whether it's in your DAW, just get the notes down of what is the motif, like what's going on, whether it's just like a simple arpeggio of like C, E, G, or just kind of like E flat, E flat, E flat, or working with a cadence, which would be like a tonic chord to a fourth, or a tonic chord like to a fifth, or a fifth down to a first, which if you're not super familiar with music theory, that's again not important for this video, but if you are, you kind of get what I'm saying. Once you have those notes down, I really recommend, especially if you're still developing as a songwriter, and this is really helpful for production too, actually, just do like a daily practice of starting with whatever melody has come into your head, and you can just recycle those notes in terms of your bass line, the guitar chords that you build on it, the piano chords that you build on it, and that is going to give you so much material, and it's going to be very cohesive. It's going to have this song feel like one piece. And definitely as you get more advanced, I would super recommend to experiment with that, like do changes in key from the verse to the chorus, like the Beatles are really good for that. But if you're just starting out, it's really good to just focus, like keep it simple, just keep it super simple. I feel like I kind of struggled with that in the beginning because I am super creative and I really like to just kind of figure out as many things as possible as quickly as possible. But I really started to notice that when I was a lot more disciplined with myself in terms of just having 3 notes and just developing an emotional progression with turning it into a bass line and the chord progression and that sort of thing, it just started to actually feel like more like a real song, which I think speaks to just the beauty and simplicity in music, which again, I think the Beatles are amazing to learn from for that sort of concept and approach, because yeah, they ended up getting super complex with so many different albums, but so many of their best songs are just very simple rock and roll chords and beautiful melodies. So that's kind of where I stand in terms of songwriting and my approach. But once you get those notes down and once you start to feel sort of something building in terms of, say you get like a chord progression that you like on the guitar, then I would definitely recommend to go into your DAW and set the locator marks for just whether you want like a 4-bar intro and then 8-bar verse 1, maybe 4-bar pre after that, and then maybe like an 8-bar chorus. That usually can get you up to like 45 seconds to a minute. And again, this is very condensed information. It's like I'm basically like squishing a lot of ideas and approaches into just one kind of simple, straightforward like exercise and idea for you to try like just right now. If you're just like really itching to write a song today, like just try this. Just do a 4-bar intro, 8-bar verse, a 4-bar pre, and an 8-bar chorus, and then maybe like a 4-bar post chorus, and then repeat that. Do another 8 bars for verse 2, maybe an 8-bar pre if you want it to build even more to the second chorus, and then same length chorus, 8 bars, and then same post, 4 bars, and then you can either have another verse, which is super rare right now, but I'm never like one to be tied to like current trends, so if you're feeling something, just go for it. But I think again, it's like with the simplicity of it, if you just kind of do something that it might not feel super out of the box, but it gives you a really basic structure to then go in and get really creative with instrumentation, get creative in terms of your lyrics, get creative in terms of the chords that you're using, and like whether they're major, minor, diminished. It's like there's so much to be said for finding creativity in very simple, confined spaces and in kind of constrictions and challenging yourself. So I feel like it's never a good excuse to say like, oh, like I can't work with this, like this is just too like one way or another. It's like every opportunity to write music is an amazing thing. Like it's in front of you now. Like that's a really cool thing to just kind of explore, and I think it challenges like personal creativity in terms of that. So yeah, it's like basically like if you want to take the song structure that I just delineated or just kind of come up with something similar that works for you, do that. You have your song structure either mapped out on a piece of paper. Sometimes I'll do that where I'll just like sketch out little boxes and I'll label it like I'll do like 4 boxes and like 1 box equals 1 bar, and then I'll label that as verse 1 or like the intro, or however many bars that you want for the verse sections versus the pre versus the chorus. So if you get all of that down and that's good and you're happy with it, that's when I like to go in and start to fit like whether I had lyrics come through with the melody. Like that will happen a lot. A lot of people ask like, is it like the lyrics or the melody that comes first? Often it's both. It's just depending on what comes through for you. Even if you don't have a melody to start with, you want to just pick up the guitar and you find a chord progression and you're like, oh, like an E minor to an E minor 7, just going back and forth sounds really moody and interesting. Lost my pen. Then yeah, if you just get a mood going with something, start thinking of like a story or what you're feeling, what's on your mind. I feel like that was really good advice in the Ryan Tedder songwriter course, is that it is just something that's like just take what's on your mind. Like, who did you just have a phone conversation with? What's interesting to you right now? Like what's making you angry or happy, or what kind of like is inspiring you? What's giving you hope to feel excited for tomorrow? What's like, maybe you're in love, maybe there's like a person in your life who's just amazing and they just are making you see things in completely new ways. That's such a fun thing to write about. A lot of times I'll go to poetry books, a lot of older poetry that is more mystical, I really like a lot. Traditional poetry like romantics, like a lot of modernists, a lot of writers from the Harlem Renaissance. They have really lyrical writing, which is very cool. Or even just sit down and write kind of stream of consciousness. That's really cool too. Like so much crazy stuff can come out of your mind, and like I feel like David Bowie, he was a really big fan of that. Patti Smith, I'm pretty sure. And just a lot of the beat poets from the 50s like Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs. That was a tool they used a lot to get some new ideas. Just, it's almost like you're just grabbing it from the ether and putting it on paper, and that can lead to really interesting places in terms of what the song ends up being about. So once you have that, that's cool, and you can kind of build on a cohesive idea of what's happening in the song. And again, like this can change so much. Like there are great songs that will just repeat things over and over, and because it fits the music so well, it's iconic and it's great, and it just gets everyone just feeling what that song wanted them to feel. And that can be challenging in itself because it feels scary if you're just like, I'm literally just repeating this thing over and over, like whether it's for the chorus or a more experimental thing. If it works, it's fine. Then also, if you do want to have more of a song, like tell a story, then it's cool to, like, one of the main things is that people say, does it read top down? And that means if you look at the lyrics, does it make sense? Like, can you read through it, and does it lead you from one place to another in a way that makes sense. Like if you were telling it to a friend or something, they would be like, oh right, I get it, like you know, and then what, like then what did she say, or like what did he do after he ran out the door, or like after the car crashed or something like that. And like definitely go to like folk writers. They're really good at that sort of thing. And like that's where like Electric Eden comes in. I feel like Vashti Bunyan, she's a great songwriter, especially for indie artists in terms of telling a story. Like she's really good with imagery. She's really good at painting a picture and kind of walking you through a scenario, and it feels so magical because it weaves into the music in a really, really special way, and I think that's super important. Yeah, if you're an indie artist, like there's so many amazing musicians out there that you can look to for how they've done that. Even people like Mazzy Star, their lyrics can be very ambiguous, but because they fit with the music so well and it all comes together so well, it still puts you in a space of feeling something that feels very recognizable and very much like you can connect to it, and it takes you somewhere. And I think that's kind of, you know, that's what songs do and what they're meant to do at the end of the day. And again, it depends on the genre, it depends on you as an artist and what you're trying to say. But if you just kind of hone in on what you are trying to say, and you're aware of what you're writing to and what you're writing for, then this very quickly becomes something that you can tap into. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. When I say the easier it gets, that can come in like cycles and waves, but it's like the practice of sitting down to do it. I think that's what gets easier, because if it was easy all the time, it'd be kind of boring, to be honest. But it being a creative process, it's always going to change, and that's what's so exciting and amazing about it. The process of sitting down and being in a room with people doing this sort of thing, that I think that's what gets easier, and it makes it more exciting too, because it's like your confidence will build in terms of being able to work with other people and show your stuff to other people. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. I am going to maybe come up with some more that are a little bit more like actually showing you kind of like on my screen what's happening when I'm kind of like working on a song or working through something, even like going through and explaining how I've written certain songs that I have on Spotify. If you're down to learn more about that, then let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching my video, and please feel free to send me a message on Instagram or email and let me know what helped you on this video. Thank you.